again, attachment A, we do list the LPN programs that are part of, or the practical nursing programs that are part of CSN's offering, including one E, practical nursing for military medic corpsmen to LPN, and the practical nursing A certificate. We do list achievement. So those are the programs we were able to identify leading toward a practical nursing credential in the state that are being included in the WIG proposal. Now, another part that, if I may add, would be that we've been in discussion, and these lists were developed in discussions with the presidents at each community college. And so if there were a new, let's say a new PN program came online the following year that would LPN credential at CSN or any other college, that could then be added to this list. So it is not a static list. It is meant to grow and change as the needs of the state change.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Other questions? Just for clarification, I think you went over this, but I think it's important because you mentioned all the different scholarships and grants that we have available, but whether it's Millennium or Promise or SSOG, the WIG is actually available to folks that aren't just out of high school, right? It could be anybody.
Jose Quiroga, research analyst for the record. That is correct, Mr. Chair. The WIG pilot would be available to any student as long as they meet the eligibility criteria outlined, regardless of age or how long ago they graduated high school.
Great, thank you. And as we've talked about grants and things in the past, that's always been the one piece that we never quite get to, because we always tend to focus on the kids that are just graduating from high school and trying to get them in. But if somebody got out of high school and then went to work and then decided to go back to school, that kind of a grant can help them to be able to go back to school, right? All right, any other questions? I'm not hearing any, so thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Excited that we have that opportunity to be able to get more folks in school. All right, so that was item number 8. And so we'll close item number 8 on the agenda and go to item number 9, presentation concerning Hispanic serving institutions and minority serving institutions, including institutional updates and impact on students. And we have Ms. Clarissa Cota from the CSN here to make that presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Dennis, committee members, colleagues, and guests. My name is Clarissa Cota, Vice President of the College of Southern Nevada, North Las Vegas campus. It is my pleasure to be with you this morning in my capacity as the Nevada System of Higher Education HSI Task Force Chair. This presentation will cover the important work being done by our Nchsi institutions to better serve our students of color and lead them to student success. Our Nevada universities and colleges provide the gateway for these students to pursue higher education credentials and degrees in high demand, high wage workforce sectors. I will provide a brief overview of the MSI HSI designation, go into Nchsi institutional work and student success data, and end with the HSI Task Force goals 22 and 23 academic year. Minority serving institutions emerged in response to a history of inequity and lack of minority people's access to higher education institutions. They are now an integral part of American higher education, serving the needs of low-income, underrepresented students of color explicitly recognized within the Higher Education Act. Because MSIs enroll a substantial share of minority students, many of whom may not have otherwise attended college. The continuous development and the success of these institutions is critical for achieving a state's higher education and workforce goals. Students at an MSI are more likely to have a lower level of academic preparedness, come from high stress, high poverty communities, and half of all MSI students are first in their families to attend college, compared to 35% of students attending predominantly white colleges. Of the 8 distinct categories of MSIs, the Nevada higher education institutions are either Asian American, Native American, Pacific Island serving institutions, or otherwise referred to as Nchsi, and or they are Hispanic serving institutions or HSIs. Once designated by the U.S. Department of Education as an eligible MSI, the higher education institution can then compete for federal funds on behalf of their students and communities. To be considered an Nchsi, in Nevada, we have 3 Nchsi institutions which are designated as such: CSN, Nevada State, and UNLV. These institutions serve low-income students and have a combined 10% or more undergraduate enrollment of students who identify either as Asian American, Native American, or Pacific Islander. 5 of our 7 institutions are HSIs: CSN, Nevada State, UNLV, TMCC, and WNC. These institutions serve low-income students and have at least a 25% or higher undergraduate enrollment of students who identify as Hispanic. HSIs across the nation are the fastest growing. Each year, it becomes more competitive for HSIs to compete for federal funding. Nationally, there are 559 HSIs, and collectively, they represent 18% of all higher education institutions, yet they are home to 66% of all of the 3.2 million Hispanic undergraduate students. They also serve 1/3 of all Pell Grant recipients in the nation. It is worth noting that for the first time in 30 years, this past year, there has been a slight decrease in the total number of HSIs, which is representing the national effect COVID-19 has had on Hispanic enrollment at our higher education institutions. HSIs tend to enroll the highest number of all minority students as well. HSI serves 66% of all Hispanic students, 41% of all Asian American students, 35% of Native American Pacific Islander, and 24% of all Black undergraduate students. Therefore, when federal funds are received by HSIs, they will increase the capacity of these institutions to serve all of their students. So what should we expect when our institutions reach an MSI designation? There should be a focus on hiring diverse faculty and staff. We should be creating environments with an intentional focus on student learning. We need to be very intentional in addressing the potential deficiencies resulting from poor college readiness. So as we grow in our number of MSIs in the state and HSIs, the success of them is critical to reaching higher education and workforce goals. The Nevada system of higher education has taken a proactive approach to address the needs of our minority students. In 2014, 8 years ago, Nevada had ranked 5th in the country for having the highest percentage of Hispanics at 28%. So under the direction of the chancellor, the Nchsi HSI task force was formed in 2014 and supported by the Board of Regents to help their institutions ready themselves to become HSIs. CSN became the first HSI in Nevada in 2015, followed by Nevada State, then UNLV, TMCC, Western Nevada College, and each were following every subsequent year. This is a very rapid growth if you can see how the demographics of the state has changed and how our institutions are matching that change. UNR and GBC are emerging HSIs with now over 20% Hispanic student enrollment. Our institutions have made great strides and each has now created their own HSI task force to focus on initiatives meant to better serve our students. The HSI task force represents all 8, including DRI, of the Nchsi institutions, where we enable a system-wide approach in supporting the work we are all doing regarding our HSI, MSI initiatives, and ultimately creating campus environments that are welcoming in policy, climate, and academic programming to the students we serve. There are distinct benefits from having a statewide coalition. First and foremost, we are recognized as the only state in the country that has a unified task force that includes R1s, state colleges, and community colleges, all coming together around this very particular focused efforts. This has drawn the attention of national institutions and national organizations and brought opportunity to our state and to our institutions, their administrators, our faculty, and our students by bringing these best practices to Nevada and allowing it to take place here without having to send our faculty and staff out of state. We've also been leveraging statewide partnerships. At our monthly meetings, we can share information, share board membership, share opportunities that benefits our students. And we have often speak about collaborative grant writing. We're currently engaged right now as the 2 Title V's, Nevada State and CSN, in collaborative work of professional development, where we know that regionally we are serving the same students. So system-wide recommendations to the Board of Regents and other elected officials equals better service to our Nevada students. As we look at how our Nchsi institutions are performing, it's important to take a look at our pipeline and consider looking into the future. Currently, we have 37.7% of our Nevada high school graduates in 2020 enrolling at Nchsi institutions. It is of note for all of us that this is down from 42.4% in 2019. We also know that there is a growing pipeline continuing to grow in our K through 12 student populations, which has now reached 43.4% Hispanic enrollment. So when we look at how our Nchsi institutions are faring in terms of our headcount and enrollment, it is no secret that students pursuing in higher education in Nevada has suffered an enrollment drop over these last 2 years, significantly impacted by COVID. Our institutions across the state, with the exception of Nevada State, have experienced these enrollment drops. If you look at this chart and take a look at our community colleges, which have experienced the largest drop in enrollment, this can be a reflection of the student population served by community colleges, students with the highest socioeconomic needs, and were the most impacted by COVID-19 factors. When we look at the numbers of our students across the board receiving awards, the numbers of awards confirmed by students have continued to increase in this same time period. Across all institutions, with the exception of CSN, but overall, there has been an increase in awards conferred across the system by 5.3%. Excuse me, it advanced quite a bit. Okay. When we start to take a look by race and ethnicity of who are receiving these awards, you can start to see that the interventions at our campuses to promote student success are resulting in a positive impact for our students of color. When you take a look at the increases that have been occurring across the different ethnicities, it continues to increase in the last 3 years. As our MSIs and HSIs continue to conduct their intentional work, the number of awards continue to increase, with the exception of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders and our white students. This indicates work has to continue, as we want all of our students to continue improving their achievement. Community colleges confer the majority of the skill certificates. So when we look at the workforce awards conferred, skills certificates can usually be completed within at most a year period of time. These certificate of achievements are 30 credit programs, which can take someone maybe a year or extend it over into a year and a half. And then the associate's degree is considered a 2-year degree, although we know we track completion within a 3-year time period. So when we look at these workforce awards that have been conferred, you'll see that there has been a drop in skill certificates, which is of concern, and resources and focus are being placed at the community colleges to turn this around. But this also is indicative of the fact that the community colleges have been the institutions who have experienced the largest drop in enrollment during the same period of time. As we look across the institution, the Nchsi institutions, the largest minority student population is our Hispanic students. 1/3 of all of the Nchsi students are Hispanic. Once again, the performance and achievement of our Hispanic students continues to improve. If you take a look at the graduation rates at the bottom of the chart, the slide, you'll see the institutions, their overall graduation rates, and then the Hispanic graduation rates. We want to see those gaps closing as you are slowly, with the exception of GBC, where their Hispanic graduation rates exceeds their overall graduation rates. But we want to see those gaps closing so there's equitable achievement by all students, particularly as we're tracking Hispanic students in this slide. I now am going to just give a brief highlight and some information for each of our institutions who are doing way beyond what I can say in this short presentation, but they have been very intentional in their work. CSN is proudly a majority minority serving institution. We have a 36% Hispanic enrollment, and we proudly received a Title V federal grant based on our HSI designation for $2.8 million to help guide students through Gateway Math. We also are trying to create welcoming environments with cultural programs and had started a mariachi program that is now first in the country. Great Basin College is an emerging HSI. They're at 23% Hispanic enrollment out of their 3,800 students. And they are actively engaged not only in the HSI task force at the Nchsi level, but on their campuses as well, and have formed their own HSI task force at their campus. Nevada State College has received 2 Title V grants, federal monies coming to their institution and serving their students to increase the teacher education pipeline. They are now at 41% of their 4,500 students overall as a Hispanic enrollment. They are both an HSI and an APZ institution. Truckee Meadows is at 34% Hispanic enrollment as of fall 21, and they're making great strides in their Hispanic student achievement throughout. They're very active in their multicultural centers, as well as their task force that they have formed for their institution. UNLV also is an